Anxiety is our decision to believe that a negative impact or a negative outcome is going to happen in the future. Faith or hope is just our decision to believe that a positive outcome is going to happen in the future. At the end of the day, you get to pick, because neither one of them are real right now. You're choosing which one you're going to believe. You get to pick whether you want to pick anxiety. Do you want to tell yourself an unresourceful story that actually makes it you less likely to step out there and do it again in the future? Or do you want to tell yourself a resourceful story? Because at the end of the day, you're making it up anyway.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Dolan, your host for Time-Tested Mastery, Life Lessons Self. And today we have a special guest. His name is Robert Heath Sr., a dynamic communicator, accomplished author, and one of the nation's top voices in empowering leadership. A decorated U.S. Marine Corps officer, Robert led one of the largest support companies in the USMC and was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal for his leadership. He combines military precision with over 20 years of teaching, coaching, and personal development. His experience to help leaders elevate performance, boost initiative, and create lasting impact. With multiple advanced degrees, including a JD from the University of Illinois, and dual MBAs, Robert brings both wisdom and practicality to every conversation. Today we're diving into his powerful book, Courageous Communication: How Great Leaders Create Alignment, Navigate Conflict, and Drive Meaningful Change. It's volume 3 of his Legacy Leader series, and it's a must-read. So let's get into it. So Robert, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you here.
Thanks for having me, brother. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, with that introduction, I wanted to share with you that most of the people that listen to my show, they're salespeople, and communication is really, really vital for the success of their career as well as the rest of their lives, right?
Yeah.
But before we get to the communication part, I wanted, I really appreciate your service to the Marine Corps. I wish that I had gone that route when I was a kid. As a young man, I've always had this thing for Marines, and can you share a little bit about your experience there and any lessons that you learned in the Marine Corps that sort of guided you on this path?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for that as well. I think one of the interesting things that I learned in the Marine Corps, just in general, was about how important it was. There's a saying in the Marine Corps that says, earn, never given, right? And that was really important to me because when we went through officer candidate school, there's 10 weeks of, right, as distinct from boot camp. Officer candidate school is one of those situations where every week they're letting you know that you could be going home this week. You need to understand, like, it's not promised, it's not given. You're not going to just automatically graduate. You don't graduate unless we deem that you've made it, right? Like there's this pressure and this tension that makes you constantly feel like even if you do everything quote unquote right, there's still a subjective component of them screening and evaluating and determining whether or not you're the type of person that can lead Marines. And so until you graduate, you haven't made it, so to say, right?
Yeah.
And there was this moment when we were right before graduation. We finished our final inspection. We're getting ready for graduation, and they get us all together in the squad bay. And, they're walking around. The platoon staff is all walking around with the platoon commander, and they're, talking to each person as we're getting. First thing is you get inspected to get ready to go out for the parade. And as they talk to you, they're, clasping a hand with everybody and letting them know. And in the ear, you don't know this till they get to you, but once they get to you in your ear, they're saying, all right, so now you've made it. You've done what you needed to do. And you have earned the title Marine, right? And they put an eagle, globe, and anchor in your hand. They say, no matter what happens from this day forward, no matter what anybody ever tells you, nobody can ever take this away from you. You have now become a Marine. You've earned that. Once a Marine, always a Marine. And from this day forward, whether you decide to keep serving, whether you do whatever, you've made it. And that moment was so powerful. I mean, room full of grown men, everybody is sitting there holding back tears and trying to, keep their bearing and everything. But it's such a powerful moment because each of us that went there, right, we wanted to serve our country. We wanted to do something that was going to make a mark on our legacies, but also make us part of that legacy that is the Marine Corps tradition and legacy. And I realized how important it was in that moment that we recognize that when people give us their trust, right? When people listen to us, when people allow us to influence them, that's something that we have to earn, right? That's one of the biggest things that becoming a Marine Corps officer taught me. The ability to influence is a privilege, right? The ability to steer someone in a particular direction, to show them something, to open their minds, to broaden horizons, all the rest of that. That's a privilege that people give you by giving you their ear and giving you their mind and giving you their time. And we have to make sure that we're constantly earning the right to make a recommendation to people instead of feeling in some way entitled because of our position, because of our knowledge base, because of our leadership status, or whatever it may be. Especially in sales, is something to remember. I remember Zig Ziglar said this, and I loved it. It was sales is nothing more than helping people get what they already want. And your job is to earn the right to make the recommendation that this thing that you have is what they want. And you do that by listening. You do that by engaging. You do that by doing all of the things that we talk about in courageous communication that create an environment for the conversation to happen appropriately, and ultimately that earn you the right to make a recommendation.
Wow. Well, there's three things, and I want to make sure I remember them. The first one is when you were talking about the anchor, the
Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. Yeah.
That's a private event where it's only you and your guys, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And and so that's it's funny is that you would share that stories because I just recently heard it, and the person that was sharing that story said exactly the same thing, is that there's all kinds of things that you do out, there's the family thing and everything, but when you become a Marine, it's with you and the guys, and it's exactly the experience that you were talking about.
Yeah. It's a really powerful experience, and you know how much it means because all of you have gone through the same thing together. You've seen the ups, you've seen the downs, you've seen the times when you've been getting chewed out, you've seen the times when you were successful, right? All of the things, and so it's a very raw and vulnerable moment.
Yeah. Very exciting. I will never forget when my youngest brother graduated, and we went down there, and it was the first time I've seen him after he went into boot camp. And all of a sudden I was looking at this kid that was no longer a kid anymore. I mean, I was like, what did they do to him? Mm-hmm, it was all good. So I can appreciate that experience. I really value what you've done for the country and what it's done for you, I think, too. So,
thank you so much.
Another thing that I picked up in there that you talked about is that your graduation was never assured. You had to earn it. Mm-hmm. And that is a big thing that's happening in the real estate industry today. They've changed some things with buyer agency and buyer brokerage and all of that. Mm-hmm. And one of the, quote things that everybody's talking about is that, we need to be able to share, our value with the customer. And in my mind, is if you're not demonstrating your value to the customer, no matter what you say isn't going to make any difference, right?
That's it. Yeah. Right. Another mentor of mine that I like listening to, there's a guy, you might be aware of, Myron Golden. And one of the things that Myron Golden talks about, again, about sales, he says, sales is uncovering for the customer the value of what it is that you have, such that they can't wait to give you money for it. Right. And so often we get stuck, right? Because I'm in the consulting business. So B2B sales and B2C sales, we do a lot of work in this field. And one of the biggest things, right, in leadership consulting especially, there is such a gap between bottom line results and the connection of dots that get back to what we teach when we're teaching leadership. Now, if you are somebody who's good at actually kind of aligning those dots and showing people that, then you can have a successful business. But a lot of the reasons why people struggle with it internally, even in businesses, HR departments and learning and development departments and leadership training departments, the reason that they struggle with it is because they're unable to explain the value in terms that the customer or the buyer understands, right? Mm-hmm. The buyer understands the money that's in their pocket, that you're going to ask them for your services. What they don't understand is how the value of your services is commensurate with that money that's in their pocket. And it's our job to be able to uncover that value in such a way, not just that they might give you money, not just that they might feel a little bit comfortable with paying you, but such that it's a no-brainer, so that they can't wait to give you money for the value that you're giving them, because it's so obvious that it's worth the money that you're asking for it, that they're like, shut up talking, here, take my money.
Yeah. Interesting. So, going towards your book with courageous communication, is there, another event maybe outside of your military experience that you would call a watershed event where, the power of communication, where there was a paradigm shift and everything changed for you?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good question. I think the thing for me is actually the thing that led me on my pathway to becoming a Marine Corps officer. It led me on my pathway to law school. So before I was in the Marine Corps, before I went to law school, I was a school teacher. So I taught Spanish for 6 years, coached basketball, was on my way to becoming a school superintendent. That was my whole plan. I grew up originally south side of Chicago, south suburbs. I always say I grew up hood adjacent, right? I wasn't ever in the dangerous schools or anything like that. My parents, my mother specifically, would never let me go to those schools. But our church was in a bad neighborhood. I had family members that lived in bad neighborhoods. We would, hang out and everything. So I've been in lots of different situations where I knew what that life was like, but I also knew this other life over here that we got to do, even though, right, we would use my grandmother's address or whatever, so we'd go to different schools. So we lived in spaces where our house got broken into, but we went to school in spaces where that wasn't happening. And so for me, education was the way out. Education was the pathway. And so I was on my pathway of becoming someone who could be a steward of that educational process for a great number of people in urban situations. And I remember I was teaching school in Memphis, Tennessee, which was at the time the 20th largest school district in the country. And literally the school superintendent that had come in was originally from Memphis, had gone away, gotten degrees, gotten certifications, worked her way up, and now she was qualified to become superintendent. I was like, this is what I want. This is me in 20 years. So I'm watching everything that she's doing. I gave up my summer for an in-service to learn and got a ton of great information I still use today in a lot of the things that I teach. And I was that guy. I became the school improvement team coordinator, and I was that guy who would do those school posters that, pride, and it would be an acronym or whatever. I was the guy that was making those posters and doing all that type of stuff for our school. The rah-rah guy, the guy I was doing in services for our teachers and teaching them how to do, we're going to treat kids differently, and we're going to talk to kids differently. We're going to build a culture at this school where people want to learn it. All those things. I was giving those speeches, and I was bought in, but I was able to watch over the preceding 18 months and the exit of that superintendent, how her ability to communicate that vision and galvanize the school district wasn't sufficient to the moment. And therefore, she was not able to overcome the opposition to her vision, which I had believed in, saw, and felt like was amazing. And I realized that there's a component to leadership, which is not just having the vision, but it's having the ability to communicate it in such a way that other people adopt it and make it their own. And I realized that if I didn't get better at those skills, I was going to be her in 20 years, failing at this thing that I'm trying to do, where it wasn't that she had any malicious intent. It wasn't that she was stealing money or anything. She just wasn't able to galvanize the district. And so 18 months later, she was no longer in charge. And that sent me on the pathway where I went to two different places. One, I went to law school to really understand all of the levers of power. I understood that she didn't just have the school opposition. She had political opposition. She had business opposition. She had community opposition. And understanding how all those correlate and work together was something that I didn't know a lot about. So I went to law school to really understand how we build our rule structures and our governance structures. And then I went to the United States Marine Corps largely to learn how to lead people, how to communicate in such a way, how to get people to do something that is not normal. It is not normal to want to run towards gunfire instead of away from it, right?
Right.
But
Right.
but Marines and our service members, every day, that's what we all sign up and stand to do. And there's a way that you lead people to do that I thought was really was something I need to learn. And so in my time in the Marine Corps, that was definitely something I paid a lot of attention to. And when it all boils down to it, a lot of people think that it's about hierarchy and it's about title and it's about structure. The reality is it's about communication. And it's about communicating in such a way that the other person wants to be on your team. And that was the kind of aha moment, right? It started with me realizing that I had a deficiency, and it culminated in me becoming a company commander, me being able to lead Marines and actually being pretty decent at it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So it sounds like that administrator that you were talking about had great content, but wasn't able to motivate the people that she was intending to lead.
Exactly.
And it is a super secret skill, I think, in order to get people to buy into. I mean, the best teams are that way, right?
Exactly.
The best teams, they're all moving in the same direction. You don't have synergy if you don't have buy-in from the people that you're dealing with.
That's it. And the only thing I would push back, I don't think it's a super secret skill. Because I think everybody does it. We just don't recognize it, right? And one of my favorite quotes in leadership is from the Tao Te Ching, so 3,000-year-old kind of Chinese philosophical writing, right? And in it, Lao Tzu, the author, says, the greatest leaders, we barely know they exist. When their task is accomplished, when their job is done, the people say we did it ourselves. Yeah. And I remember when I first saw that, it was profound. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I had it up on my classroom wall and I would teach it to everybody. And it was about probably 15 years later that I realized the secondary meaning to that. Because like, I love that idea, right? The greatest leaders, it's empowerment. It's the key thing to empowerment, right? The people say we did it ourselves. We're empowering. But the other thing about it is that first line, the greatest leaders, we barely know they exist. The whole idea is when the greatest leaders are doing what they do, we're normally not aware of it. We're not seeing what's happening. We're just feeling the effects of what's happening. And so for most of us, we don't know what it is that's moving us. We don't know what it is that's motivating us, that's allowing. And the thing that we think that it is isn't what it is, right? And so many of us, that super secret thing is hiding in plain sight. We've all done it before. If you've ever convinced somebody to go see a movie or to go to a restaurant or to read a book or to watch a TV show, you've already led somebody. Right?
Yeah.
It's just you don't know what you're doing when you're doing that. That's why you can't apply it in other scenarios.
Interesting. So moving in a little bit of a different direction for the salespeople. You've been working with a lot of people. And so my question to you would be, two-part is, what is the most common barrier that you see to good communication? And how do you suggest that people overcome it?
That's a great question. And I'll give you a threefer because there's three main killers of communication that I talk about when we talk about courageous communication, and they kind of go hand in hand. They play off of each other. So one of them is, and probably the most simple one, is inadequate language. Sometimes we don't have the words to articulate what we're trying to articulate. And if you ever had that experience where you've been like, well, it's right on the tip of my tongue. What's that word I'm looking for, right? That frustrating experience everybody has had before. Now, we've all seen what happens when that experience goes down with toddlers. Because if anybody ever has encountered toddlers, what you know is that they know just enough language to know that language gets them what they want, and just not enough language to be able to get what they want with language for everything, right? And what happens when a toddler realizes that their words aren't working? What do they start to throw?
Temper tantrum. Typically.
Exactly. They start to throw a temper tantrum, right? Now, the funny thing about it is we think that we grow out of that, but we don't. Adults just throw more professional temper tantrums, right? And the problem about our temper tantrums is that when we're dealing with the fact that we can't communicate, and so we're getting frustrated because we don't know the right words to get the person to do what we want them to do, the other person doesn't know that you're frustrated because you don't have the right words. They think that you're frustrated with them. And so it winds up being a barrier to communication because what they're picking up from you is negative energy. is escalated energy, is frantic and manic energy that's really about your internal frustration that's going on. But that internal frustration, that inadequate language, that inadequate ability to articulate yourself, that also then shows up in frustration and tension and friction. It communicates something to your communication partner that makes them not necessarily as open as they might be, because it's not necessarily as safe, because they don't know what's going on over there, but it just doesn't feel right. Right. And so this is one of
I'm smiling because I have worked with salespeople for 40 years, and we always talk about those situations where what you're describing happens with a potential customer, and and it's the frustration. How do I overcome that?
Exactly. And this is one of the reasons why, right, a lot of salespeople, especially for newer salespeople, this is the reason why you have scripts and you want to practice and you want to figure out what are your components, what are your features, what are your benefits, what are your outcomes. This is the reason why you want to drill these things so much, because when you need the language, you need it to be there for you. Otherwise, you will start communicating things that you're not aware that you're communicating. You will start communicating differently from what the words are that are coming out of your mouth. Because one of the things that people don't realize is our communication with each other is so much more than just the words that we say. 7% of what we communicate are the words that we say. 38% is actually the tone, pitch, volume, and timbre of what we say. But that's still only 45% is what's coming out of your mouth. The vast majority, 55% of what you communicate to people has to do with the energy with which you communicate it, the body language with which you communicate it, the congruency with which you communicate what you're trying to communicate. And so when we're dealing with that internal frustration, but we're trying to sell people peace, or, that their outcome is there, and we're trying to sell the dream, but we're frustrated inside, there's an incongruence there that tells them not to trust you. Right. And so inadequate language is one of those things that it's kind of like a silent killer that we're not even aware of, because it's what's going on internally, but it focuses us internally, so that we're not able to really pay attention to the person that we're trying to communicate to, because communication is all about the response that you get. It's not just the transmission. It's making sure that it's being received and that you're getting good feedback. Right. And so that's the first hurdle that a lot of people run into. The second one, and like I said, these kind of play off of each other, because like I told you, that trust piece is really important. The second one is what we like to call amygdala hijack. And amygdala hijack, the amygdala is the part of the brain where it's the threat center of the brain. It's literally a binary center in your brain. It's one of the oldest parts of your brain. And your brain basically says threat, no threat. Do we need to worry about this and fight or flight, or can we just keep doing what we're doing? Survival is great. Everything is good. And so often what winds up happening, the funny part about this is when people get into amygdala hijack, you ever had those people that kind of like just say the same thing over and over, but they speak louder as if they've said something different? Right. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, they're in amygdala hijack. They're not saying anything different, but in their minds, they're clearly delineating and articulating their point, right? That is problematic for both parties, because we already talked about how they already start to not trust you when your energy is incongruent, when you're in when you're dealing with inadequate language. When you're actually in amygdala hijack, you actually are getting into a defensive or an offensive mode. So you're either retreating or you're becoming more aggressive. But here's the funny thing. It's a not just a kind of mental, intellectual thing that happens. Your body actually experiences a cocktail of hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, and other stress hormones that start doing certain things to your brain. So blood flow starts removing itself from the prefrontal cortex part of the brain, the part that's responsible for language and emotional regulation and abstract thinking, right? And starts moving more towards the gross motor functions of the body. It also starts bringing blood from the extremities into the core of the body. And so as this is happening, you're getting more and more aggressive, but with less and less emotional regulation.
Right? Less and less thinking, right?
Exactly. At the end of the day, it is literally, it's a scientific fact. When you're in amygdala hijack, you are getting dumber by the minute. And people don't recognize it because you don't know that you're in amygdala hijack until it's way too late. Right?
Yeah.
And so you become the threat, and that again becomes a barrier to you listening and hearing the other person, but it also becomes a barrier to them hearing you, because now you're becoming threatening to them because you have seen them as threatening to you.
Yeah. And what's funny is, so I have your book here, and the page that I have it opened up to, because that's what I love, the amygdala.
Yeah,
I don't even know how to
hijack,
pronounce it, but I have witnessed it, and I have witnessed it the first time a salesperson feels threatened, like there's a question about the amount of their commission, or, we're not going to lower the price, or, we're not going to take that offer. Anytime there is a perceived threat from the salesperson, you can see their body language and their tone of voice change right there on the spot.
There you go. Right. Exactly. And that, again, starts to communicate an incongruent thing to what's coming out of your mouth. If what's coming out of your mouth is, hey, I'm here to help you, I'm here to work with you, I'm here to try to make your dreams come true and to make all this stuff happen, but everything is like, and you better listen to me and you better not ask me those questions, right? It's incongruent, and people pick up on that. People see that. And so that it ruins our ability to communicate with them. And then the third thing, and probably the most pervasive, is what we call unconscious bias, right? AKA the stories that we tell ourselves. So many times in the era of DEI and everything, I think unconscious bias has been kind of scapegoated as the reason for all evil in the world. And the thing that I will say is this: our biases are necessary, our heuristics are necessary, because they allow us to make quick sense of the world instead of having to study everything in depth every minute of every day. However, we have to be aware of our biases, because our biases filter out a bunch of information that would otherwise possibly be helpful to us in making the decision that we're making. And when we are not aware of our biases, we don't understand why we make certain decisions that we make. And that's the thing that a lot of people struggle with, right? When I'm doing this, I do a talk on this very thing. And generally what I'll do with the clients, I'll get a couple of volunteers and we'll go through, and one person, right, I'll give each person a fictional $1,000, right? Of course, we do a disclaimer and everything. No, this is not real money. This is not a contract. I'm just doing it for demonstration purposes only, right? But we give each person a fictional $1,000. But what we do is, for one person, they believe that I owe them $500. And we talk about how they feel about it. And inevitably, they always have, great experiences. They're like, oh, yeah, you're such a generous person. You're amazing. I would love to hang out with you. I would definitely loan you money again because you paid it back. You paid it back more than you owed and everything, right? That person loves me. They're like my biggest fan. The other person, they believe that I owe them $1,500. It's a much different experience with the person that believes that I owe them $1,500. They're looking at me kind of like, where's the rest of my money? What are you doing? I hope that you don't think this is enough. Right? I don't know if you pay bills on time if you only give me $1,000 when you owe me $1,500. This is the feeling that they have. Now, the thing that we help the audience to experience is, I didn't say that I owed them that much money. They thought that I owed them that much money. We talked about it at the beginning. I was giving them each $1,000, right? The fact that they thought that I owed them something different is what they brought to that experience. But I gave them both the same thing, even though they felt very differently about what I did to them. My same behavior was experienced differently by the people, not because of anything that I did, but because of what their impressions were, what the story was that they were telling themselves about what I did. And so often we go into situations, and in sales, this is one of the biggest things. We just talked about it, right? You've seen, and I've seen it. I've been that salesperson before who was, getting frustrated because people had questions, or getting angry because I was worried about them not making a sale because they're asking all these questions, or all these different types of things. But again, if we make sure that we're aware of the story that we're telling ourselves, if we are in sales, you are in sales to help people get what they already want. You are helping them. It is a byproduct of you helping them that they help you pay your rent.
Right.
If you do your job very well, you never have to worry about money. If you don't do your job very well, then you've got to worry about where's the next dollar coming from, where's the stuff coming from. But the people who are amazing at ensuring that they're translating everything that's coming in through the lens of, this person wants something, and it's my job to figure out what they want and to figure out whether or not that's what we're offering. Those people make sales easily. because it just feels like a conversation. It just feels like a natural conclusion to the end of the day. It's just like when you're talking to your friends about a movie to watch. You don't go to your friends and say, hey, you need to watch this movie. I don't care what else you want to watch. You need to watch this. And not because of anything that you think or whatever, because I think you need to watch this. That's not how you do it, right? If somebody's like, hey, what movie should we watch? One of the first questions you'll ask is, well, what kind of movies do you like? Right? And then you'll go through this process of figuring out what would be a good recommendation for them based on who they are. And then you make a great recommendation and life is good. But so many salespeople don't recognize that, because our filter of sales is, this is my job to make money for me, instead of understanding that your job is to do two things. Number one, uncover the value of what you have so well that people are begging you to give you money. And two, ensuring that you're helping them get what they already want, instead of trying to convince them that they want what you have.
Yeah. I've shared with salespeople over the years, I have never sold anybody anything that they didn't want. I've only helped them get exactly what they want. And if you stay out of the way and you help guide them, that seems to work really well. So
exactly.
Excellent point. So this book, Courageous Communication, is the third in your series. So you're a super leadership guy. So there's some other topics that you've worked on in the past and some things that you're working on in the future. Can you share that with the audience?
Yeah, definitely. So again, the way that I actually came to doing this work was because, like I told you all, I went on a leadership sojourn myself. I wanted to learn to be a better leader because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to make the type of impact that I wanted to make if I kept not being able to galvanize people, not being able to help people to see how where I was going was somewhere that they wanted to go, and to really find the people that wanted to go where I wanted to go, instead of trying to convince people to go somewhere that they didn't want to go. And then once I went through my time in the Marine Corps, what I learned, and it really, really opened my eyes. I used to think that bad leaders were bad leaders because they didn't care about people. They were all about ego and all about power, and they didn't want to work hard. Those were the bad leaders. If you cared about people, if you tried hard, if you worked hard, if you wanted to make sure that everybody got what they needed to get, then I thought you would be at least a competent leader, if not a great leader, right? And what I realized when I went on this journey, I saw so many leaders who cared about people, who worked really hard, who were not about power or title or anything. They were about the greater good. But because they didn't know certain specific things about leadership, they struggled and they suffered in silence. And luckily enough, I was blessed with the ability to not only learn how to be a good leader, but also because of my teaching training, I was able to help other people understand what I was learning and how to apply it. And so when I got out of the Marine Corps, I realized that if I wanted to help a lot of people, helping a lot of leaders is one way to leverage my ability to help a lot of people. And so that's really how I came into helping leaders and becoming an empowering leadership proponent. And ultimately, I wrote a couple of books. The first book that I wrote is actually book number 2 in the cycle. We rearranged it afterwards because I learned some things along the way. So the first book that I wrote is the book, Why Can't People Just Do Their Jobs? Right? And that's this one here. So why can't people just do their jobs? Because this was a question that I asked myself, and I had a lot of people asking me a number of different times over the years. And it's really about, how do we move from being managers to being leaders? Because here's the reality. You manage things, you lead people, but so many of us have learned how to manage life, right? How do you become a leader normally? You become a leader by being very good as a professional. And what is the professional's job? To get stuff done. Come hell or high water, no matter what's going on, you become the go-to guy when you get stuff done, right? The go-to guy or gal when you get stuff done, regardless of all the excuses, all the reasons why it could have gone south. You become the go-to person when you are able to overcome all of that. That's how we, right, elevate ourselves in the professional ranks. Now, here's the funny thing. Once we get good at not paying attention to the other people's idiosyncrasies, their issues, their reasons for not being able to be good enough, our own issues and reasons why we might not want to do it, when we learn how to push all that down, then people say, hey, you're doing such a great job. How about you be in charge of these other 4 people who are doing a kind of mediocre job and help them to be more like you? And guess what?
Wow.
We don't have those skills.
Wow. Because you pushed them down. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. We've spent our entire professional career not learning those things. We spent our entire professional career actually avoiding those things. And it's not, intentional. One of the things I tell my leaders all the time is like, realize that you not being a good leader is not your fault. Right. The system is not designed for you to be a good leader. Here's a funny thing. When we go through school, everybody's had this experience. If you're helping each other on a test, what's that called?
Cheating.
Exactly. Right? But in the real world, group work is exactly what we do all the time. If there's one person that can't figure it out, everybody gets together and helps that person figure it out, because we know if that person can't catch up, then we're all going to go slower together. But in school, it's all about the individual. It's all about you and what you can do. And if you're helping, if you're doing all the rest of that type of stuff, most of the times when it actually matters, it's called cheating.
Right.
And so we're conditioned away from it. So that's how we got to, why can't people just do their jobs? And in the book, like I said, I help people to go from that doer paradigm where we are the person that gets things done to realizing that as a leader, the reason that you're necessary is because the job is bigger than you. And what your power lies in is your ability to help others to be the best that they can be. As a matter of fact, we define leadership as facilitating the manifestation of greatness in others. Period, point blank. It's not about title. It's not about authority. It's not about what you get done personally. You don't want to be an executive leader. You want to be an empowering leader, because that means wherever you go, people get better.
Yeah. That is a great definition. I like that a lot.
Well, thank you, brother. And then while I was teaching and training that book, this book came up, and this is called Thriving in Chaos. And the reason that it came up was because so many of the leaders that I was teaching and trying to train, in the process of trying to help them get to the point where they can move to empowerment, where they could work, as Michael Gerber says, on their businesses and on their teams instead of in their teams.
Right.
What I came across time and time and time again were leaders who were overburdened, overwhelmed, and basically burning out. They didn't have the extra bandwidth because they hadn't learned to master their time yet. They just had learned to manage their time. Again, that whole pushing themselves down, not taking care of themselves. And they were running on what I call the burnout leadership model. It's the model where, whenever I do this in a talk, we have a coffee pot and you pour 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 and you pour. And then eventually you're empty and you got to go fill the coffee pot again. Now, the funny thing about that is when you're filling the coffee pot, guess what's not happening? Nobody's getting coffee, right? And so as leaders, we go through this kind of feast and famine cycle where we just pour ourselves out until we're empty, and then we got to go recharge. And a lot of leaders, that means that they change jobs, right? Or they go to a different company, or they go to a different area, right? Because they think that that's the issue. It's the job is draining me. But the reality, and what we teach in Thriving in Chaos, is the reality is it's not about the job where you are. It's about how you're doing it. And what we teach is a thriving model, how you can pour from your own abundance. And instead of pouring yourself out all the time, right? What we give as an image is a champagne tower, right? If you notice in a champagne tower, the first glass doesn't pour into anyone else until it is full. Cool. And then once it's full, it continues pouring into all the other glasses, and it fills up the next row of glasses underneath. But here's the beauty of it. After that row of glasses gets full, that row of glasses fills up the row of glasses below it from their abundance as well. And so all throughout, not only is the leader, aka the glass at the top, pouring from their abundance, because they're demonstrating pouring from their abundance, everybody else that learns from them and that gets filled by them learns how to do it the right way.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Great ideas, man. I'm telling you, that's cool stuff. I really enjoy it.
Well, appreciate it, brother.
I have one, I think this is a bonus for the salespeople, and I wanted to share with the audience how you and I met, because one of the things that a lot of salespeople do is they're afraid to talk to people that they don't know. And so I wanted to share, a little bit about how you and I met. I think it was about 6-8 weeks ago that, I received an email from you that said, basically it said, I think, we have a lot of similar interests, and, I've looked a little bit at your work and we have some alignment there. And, I think the email said, would you be open to having a conversation to talk about some collaboration?
Yeah.
Does that sound?
That's exactly it. Yep, that's exactly it.
So, this is a fairly new project for me since the first of the year, and I have received people messages reaching out to me, and they say, your SEO is terrible. You could use some help with your editing. You could do some stuff with this, and you could do some stuff with that. We love your content, they say. We love your content, but you're doing something wrong, kind of thing. And I've been, I've had a couple of conversations with that, but yours really intrigued me because it was such a different approach. And we spent 30 minutes on the phone or on a Zoom call talking. And I mean, it was almost like I had a brother from a different mother kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of kindred spirits with a lot of the same things going on. And, I wanted you to, to share how you're building your business by reaching out to people in the same way that you did with me. What is behind that? And what does that look like? Because salespeople need to do that.
Yeah, perfect question, right? One of my mentors says it this way. He says, business is all about relationships. And when you boil it down to brass tacks, that's exactly what it is. And that's really why I wrote Courageous Communication, because so many people, right, it's that mystery of the great leaders, the great communicators, the great business leaders. People barely know they exist. They don't know what's happening when it's happening. All that I do is I build relationships. I don't know what we're going to need. I didn't know what we might do together, whether it just be a conversation, whether it be us being on a podcast together like we are now, whether it be something else, right? And there's a lot of things that we've done together and, talked about since then, since that initial conversation. But I didn't know what that was. What I did know was that I saw something in what you were doing that appealed to me and that I wanted to get to know you better. I wanted to develop a relationship with you, and where that relationship would go, I can let that be. Yeah. I don't have to steer it. I don't have to drive it, because at the end of the day, if I am being of service, if I am helping you get what you want, and I'm making sure, right, and this is one of the things that we teach in Thriving in Chaos as well, I'm very well acquainted with what my definition of success is, what good looks like to me. And so I always make sure daily that I am walking in alignment with my purpose. Then it allows me to explore whether or not walking next to somebody else is also in alignment with my purpose. And what we talk about in Courageous Communication is ultimately your job is to build relationships in such a way that people want to be on a team with you, that people want to help you win, and especially if that means them winning as well. At the end of the book, one of the things, the fifth pillar or the fifth core strategy that we talk about is developing win-win scenarios. So much of the world is out there trying to play what Simon Sinek calls the finite game, right? The game where one of us is a winner and one of us is a loser. And the problem with finite games is if you don't allow other people to win enough, they'll quit playing the game, and then you don't get to be a winner anymore, because you can only be a winner if there's a loser. Right? But the beauty of the infinite game is that you can create scenarios where no matter who wins and who loses, everybody is winning all the time. Right? And what he gives an example is the National Basketball Association, NBA, or the National Football League, right? At the end of the day, every Sunday, you got winners and losers in the NFL or in the NBA, 82 times a year, right? But the funny thing is, every Sunday, for both of the people that play on every team in the NFL, everybody is winning because everybody's getting paid. And everybody's getting paid very well because the league's success wins for everybody else. Whether you win or lose, you're still making your money, you're still getting your check, etc. And that's the infinite game. It's making sure that at best, somebody get, at best, we get amazing things, but at our very worst, we both walk away winning and getting at least the competency level of whatever it is that we want. When you can be the type of person that people expect their lives to improve when they're hearing from you, when they're talking to you, when they're around you, they don't care whether you win, because they're wanting to be around you because they know they're going to win. And so I would say in the background of what we do is we try to build relationships where I figure out how to make it so that because I'm connected with or collaborating with somebody, they're winning. And so that they start associating winning with me. If I'm able to do that, the more I'm able to do that, the more I win, because then they're going to want to be around me more, and there's going to be the opportunities that I need to be able to win and to be able to do things like this and collaborate on a podcast and do what I love to do, which is to share this message with you and with your listeners and to add value to what you're doing. It's a win-win scenario. That's what I love to do.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it was surprisingly refreshing that you were demonstrating exactly what I'm trying to talk to my salespeople about, which is don't be afraid to talk to people you don't know.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, people are afraid to talk with people they don't know because I guess they're thinking of the worst case scenario. I might be embarrassed, it might not work out, and we need to change our thinking. It's not what we are afraid of. It's what is possible that we don't know. That's where the magic is. What do we not know? God's plans for us is a lot greater than what our fears are, for sure.
Exactly. So. Now, I agree with you 100%. Going back to Myron Golden says, right, do you want to tell yourself an unresourceful story that actually makes it you less likely to step out there and do it again in the future? Or do you want to tell yourself a resourceful story? Because at the end of the day, you're making it up anyway. And I'm the person, and I've, with my teachers, with my training, with the work that I've done, right. I think I might have talked to you about this a little bit. I just got finished getting certified as a master practitioner of neurolinguistic programming and time techniques and success coaching. And one of the things that we talk about there so often is there are, right, if you think about in the world, there are as many bad outcomes as there are positive outcomes for any different situation, right? In the idea, the law of polarity says for an up, there's a down, for a left, there's a right. So for every negative outcome over here, there's a positive corollary over here. The question is, which one are you paying attention to? Which one are you actually thinking is more likely to be the case? And what we have to understand our programming, we actually are designed to see, like, our brains let through 6 to 9 times more negative inputs than positive inputs. Again, if you remember when I talked about unconscious bias, we have to be aware of the fact that we see the world as more negative and more problematic than it actually is in reality. And for those of us that are in sales, that are in work where we're actually trying to help people get what they want, what we have to remember is to counterbalance that bias. We have to look at things more positively. We have to focus on the positive things. One of the biggest things that I talk to any sales groups that I work with, especially real estate sales, is you want to spend as much time thinking about the sales that you have made, the positive introductions that you have made, the positive networking experiences that you have. You want to spend 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much time thinking about those things and what went right as you think about the couple of things that went wrong in the sales that you didn't make. Because here's the reality. You don't know for the sales that you didn't make whether those sales would have actually been beneficial for you or not. You don't know whether those would have been the most horrible clients ever and they would have given you horrible reviews and you would have never gotten a commission because they would have fought anything. You don't know what would have happened after the fact. All you know is that you didn't get the sale. So the question is, what story do you want to tell yourself about that?
I love it. Absolutely wonderful. Well, we're running down on time. I am looking forward to our next conversation, Robert. Would you do me one favor, is to let everybody know how they can reach you, and then I am going to put all of that information in the show notes, but just give a shout out to how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah. So the easiest way to get in touch with us is to go to our website, www.tllcg.com. That stands for the Legacy Leadership Consulting Group. Again, that's www.tango Lima Charlie Golf.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Robert Heath Sr., and there's a 007 there if you put it after the N, because I'm a big, I like James Bond. But other than that, feel free to reach out. I think that we've also got some freebies for your group, because one of the things, like I said, for leaders especially, and if you're in sales, understanding what success is the first step for everything that we do. And so one of the things that I want to give to anybody listening to the program, we have a Defining Success self-assessment tool that's basically an opportunity for you to go through and work out what does success look like for you. Because when you can be in alignment with your goals, in alignment with what you know to be success, life works just a lot easier. And so it'll be in the show notes or whatever. You can just go ahead and click that link and grab that. And we also have a courageous communication primer. So everything that we were talking about as far as the 5 core strategies and courageous communication and everything, I know that, one podcast is not enough time to master all of that. But what we did is we created a primer where you've got some questions that you can ask internally when you're thinking about how to navigate conversations, but also we've got some questions that you can prime the conversation with to your conversation partner that'll help you to do and to apply some of the principles that we teach. And so you can get that as well. You just click the link and we can get that to you. So those are the ways to get in touch with me, and I welcome anybody who wants to reach out.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today. All of that information will be in the show notes so that people can get in direct touch with you. Again, I want to thank you for joining us today. I look forward to our next conversation and catching up. And so for today, I'm going to sign off. This is Mark Dolan at Time Tested Mastery. And remember, ordinary people can do the most extraordinary things, and I'm inviting you to it.